Welcome to the She's Bold podcast. I'm Beth Whitman. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining me for another episode of the She's Bold podcast. This is where I feature one-on-one conversations with inspirational women, and it highlights the bold things they are doing. If you like what you hear and you want to support this ad-free show, you can do so by going to patreon.com/bebold. Patreon supporters help me bring these conversations to you. It's a vote of confidence that you want to hear more positive and inspirational stories from and about women, something I think we are sorely lacking. And you are helping me to do just that by becoming a supporter with a donation of just $5 a month. $5 a month. As a patron, you'll get access to bonus audio content, have the ability to submit questions for me to ask guests, and ladies are invited to become part of a private Facebook group. So thank you to Patreon supporters. Today's conversation is with Jennifer Cobb Moynihan. Jennifer is a communications coach who works with executives and leaders from a wide range of companies, including Fortune 10 firms. Her specialty is helping people tell their personal stories in a way that ties into their business and how they're showing up in a public-facing way. Now, as you'll hear, Jennifer is a keen observer of people, and it's this skill that's helped her create a business where she coaches people on how to better connect with customers as well as colleagues. You do not need to be an executive to get something out of this conversation. Jennifer's got some great insight into how we all might better shape our story and how and where we should incorporate our opinions into our public personas. With that, please enjoy this conversation with Jennifer Cobb Moynihan. How long have you been in Austin?
Just moved back to Austin.
You did?
Yes, in the last year.
Oh, and were you up here in Seattle then?
Up here in Seattle.
What brought you back to Austin?
We always wanted to move back. Kids were gone, grown up. Both my husband and I went to UT, loved living in Austin, moved away, careers, and like you look out at the Seattle weather today, and
it's beautiful.
And Austin, it's not, this kind of weather. It's cold, but you don't have that horrible, dark, dreary weather.
Yeah, but cold for you is what, 65?
No, it actually has been, where I am outside of Austin gets into the 30s and 40s.
Oh, it does?
Yeah, it does.
Outside of Austin is actually colder?
By the lake areas where you have more of, it's definitely not mountains. They don't qualify, but
not after you've been here.
Yes. The hill country where you have the tallest hills are the size of, Cougar Mountain or Mount Si or really Baby Si. But that level of hill country, you do get colder weather than you do in Austin. You get in Austin.
Yeah. And how long are you from Austin originally?
No, I was born in Syracuse, lived in Texas, school in Texas, and then got asked to move to Seattle for a job. And we lived here for 14 years. And then my daughter graduated. We took advantage of the crazy real estate market, sold our house, rented for a while, and then just decided, you know what, for what I do, the work I do, all the travel I do, I can pretty much live anywhere. And so we just said, you know what, it's time. We're going to go back. And
Texas was it for you?
And Austin. Oh. Yeah. For me. Now, my husband, he would have been happy in a bunch of different places probably because he's not crazy about the Texas heat, but we both loved Austin. And there's just so much to do. It's a lot like Seattle in the sense. The music,
Austin's
theater.
Yeah, and it's changed a lot over the years. I think it had been, maybe 30 years since I had been there. And then I went last year. I go to this event, which I was telling you about, the running event. I went last year, and then I went just a couple of weeks ago. And with all the technology coming in, like all the tech companies, it has just exploded down there.
Well, you have startups, you have CPG really has gone crazy. There's a bunch of several successful companies that have really opened up the doors. You've got VRBO and you've got Yeti and you've got,
Based there?
All based.
Oh, no kidding. Okay.
Launched and based. And yes, Whole Foods, but really Whole Foods is being overshadowed by a lot of these other companies coming in. So it's really become more than just tech, although most people think, oh, Austin, the new stuff is tech. But really, there's a ton of different industries that are coming in. The labor force is really strong. The market has gotten very expensive, but it's this atmosphere, great music, lots of things to do. And it is still outdoors
and indoors. Yeah, there is a lot to do there.
Yes.
I know some other folks who are real adventure junkies. This gal, Pam LeBlanc, was on the podcast, and she calls herself an adventure junkie. And she wrote for The Statesman for a really long time. So, yeah, I know. I was surprised at how much outdoor activity.
Yeah, there's a ton. Hiking and biking, and the lakes out there are amazing. The only thing for me personally, because I am a scuba diving fanatic, is there's really not any scuba diving. But I'll go out on the lake, and I've picked up paddleboarding and, a bunch of other things that I love to do. So enjoying that, and the fact that I can walk out my back door and go do it is really nice.
So tell me about your company, and we might even back up and talk about your roundabout way, Syracuse, and finally getting to Austin. But describe your company for me.
So I have two companies, technically. One based in Seattle that I started about 10 years ago that's morphed into a different kind of business along the way. It's called Adfinis Collective. And then I have a company that I just started moving into Austin called Elevate Communications. They do the same thing, but what I found was it was really important to have two companies based on where I was based. So one in Seattle and one in Austin.
Why is that? Why two different ones?
More than anything else, people like to know you're from the same places and you're not from, quote unquote, out of town. And so for Seattle, being Seattle based is helpful. East Coast versus West Coast, Pacific Northwest. So I just kept the company because it made it easier. And I have my clients that are already established, and
I see.
To have them move over to a new company.
You just didn't want to confuse the situation.
Yeah, not just confuse the situation, but it's actually a whole lot of paperwork. And one thing I don't love doing is a whole bunch of paperwork. So if I can leave it as is and just start up a new company. Now, we'll see what my accountant tells me when I do taxes in January and February. I'm probably going to regret it. But for now, it's two separate companies. And then Elevate Communication is based in Austin. And again, same thing. I really wanted to show I was committed and wanted to be a part of the Austin community by moving back. And so to me, it was important to have a place and a space that represented Austin. At the end of the day, whether it's Adfinis, which is a pseudo-Latin version of beginning and end, and Elevate is how do you elevate your story? How do you bring your story to life, which is really what I'm all about. The two companies are all about me working with executives and founders and leaders and helping them shape and tell their story while they're telling the story of their company or the story of the business or what the things are that they're passionate about. And so whether it's the beginning and the end of the story or elevating the story, it's all really, to me, part of how do you be a storyteller and not just tell a good story, but something that comes from the heart and something that's authentic and genuine to who you are and represents the things that you want to be known for.
I know you can't name names in terms of who you work with, but can you give me an example of what you mean by that? Like, I know you just described what you do, but can you say, for example, I went into this business and I worked with this executive and we laid out this kind of plan?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I can share a bunch of different stories. So I'm fortunate enough to work with some of the largest Fortune 10 companies in the world. And so it's working with everyone from the CEO all the way to someone who's in mid-level management. And part of what I do is help them build their personal narrative, or what I would call their executive narrative. And it's helping them frame up the things that they're passionate about, the things that represent who they are, and how they show up for the company that they're working for. And in the projects that I do, by doing that executive narrative, then they're able to look at, okay, what are the things that I need to be communicating as a manager, as a leader, as an executive, as an innovator, or as someone who's concerned about culture, or someone who is focused on how do we change an industry, or how do we do product innovation? And how does that come out as something that I'm genuinely passionate about? And with that, then we look at what are their internal communications, whether they have a team of 10 people, 100 people, 60,000, 120,000 people. It's the combination of what is your internal message and then what is your external message. So how are you showing up in the media? How are you showing up when you talk to press or analysts, or when you're posting a blog, or when you're putting something out on social media? It's really important that both your internal and your external messages and your stories coexist and are cohesive and sound like they're coming from the same person.
How do you get to the core of that with a person? I would think that if a person is being genuine, maybe that's the issue, but I would think that if a person is being genuine, then all of that stuff just comes out naturally. That what they're writing in a blog post, what they're communicating to the folks at work for them and their colleagues and the media, that's all, that just comes out naturally. But is that not the case?
It's not, because so much of the time you have this voice in your head that says, oh, well, this is how I should say things because this is the way it should be done, or this is the company story, or this is the company language, or this is the way this person is doing it. And so people start second guessing. It doesn't come naturally at all. People spend so much time, individuals that I work with oftentimes are spending so much time worried about how is the message showing up, or how is it supposed to show up, that they lose the fact that it really is about what do they want to say, and what is the story they want to tell, and what is it they want to communicate, and most importantly, what is it that their audience needs to hear, wants to hear, whether it's internal or external. The reality is you get into this situation, or the people that I work with get into the situation where they end up focusing on, oh, this is the thing I am supposed to do, or this is the way I am supposed to show up, and they put a label on it, or they say, well, this is how it's supposed to be done. So even the people who are the most genuine, authentic humans, in the sense of they put their own personality in themselves out there, and they take the risk of showing up as who they are versus who they think they're supposed to be, they still have this lens or that voice in their head that says, maybe that's not the way I should say it, or you know what? Someone else would say it differently, and I should sound more like them. You know, everyone has this habit of comparing themselves to someone else and saying, oh, well, this person is a better speaker, or this person is a better presenter. And they actually don't think about, okay, well, how do I show up? How should I present myself? What are the things that I want people to know about me, whether it's my employees or my customers? There
has to be some part of the company, like whether that person is the CEO or they own the company or they are an employee of a publicly held company but still have a high profile, there still has to be some company line in there too. Is it a matter of just like incorporating kind of both of those things?
It's absolutely important. You're going to show up in representation on behalf of the company, whether you're the founder, you're an executive, or you're an employee, whether you're a frontline employee, you're leading a team, you're running a division, all of that. When you go to work, you wear a badge, you're representing the company in some form or fashion. I split it into 3 parts. The first is, what are you passionate about? What are the things you care about? What is most important to you? And that's that idea of your passion pillar. The second pillar is, well, what are your unique superpowers that you bring to the table? Every single person is unique and different, and we all have some superpower or magic component that we use in our work and in our daily lives. And then the third piece of it is, what are we doing, or how do I show up as a representative of the company? How do I show up, or how do I deliver on the company vision or mission? It's really about those 3 pieces. And when you put those together, that becomes the narrative or the story you tell. So you're always speaking on behalf of the company when it comes to things you're doing for work, but at the same time, people follow people. People buy from people. They want to know that you're trustworthy. They want to know who you are versus some characterized version of who a leader is. That doesn't mean you're going to share everything. You may not share your deepest, darkest fears or what you're most vulnerable about, or you may have a persona and part of who you are you keep private for your family and friends. But at the same time, it shouldn't be a character or some representation of some human being that you think you're supposed to be or that people are going to like, whether or not you have any of those attributes at all.
It's Adfinis, Adfinis. And as you said earlier, it's beginning and the end. Collective, is that right? Okay. So is that what you started 10 years ago?
What I started 12 years ago, 13 years ago, gosh, I'm like now thinking about it, like how long have I been doing this? Wow, really a long time for what was just like a crazy idea I'm going to do for all of 6 months and figure out my life.
Well, that's what I want to get to. I want to get to how you made that leap to creating this. What was the precursor to that?
So we had moved to Seattle and had come to work had been recruited and asked to come work for Microsoft at the time.
You were in Austin prior to that?
I was in Houston prior to that.
Houston, okay.
I was in Houston prior to that. And we wanted something different. It was an opportunity to bring our children. I have 2 children, a son and a daughter who were in 5th and 3rd grade at the time, to a different part of the country and give them exposure, because one of my biggest concerns about people growing up is they had gotten very insular in a global world. And, did children really understand there's a big world out there and there's many opportunities and different experiences? And so at the time, this opportunity came up to work at Microsoft, and I said, yep, we're going to do it. This is going to be great. We're going to move the kids. We're going to give them a different exposure. It's a tech company. I had wanted to move into tech from what I was doing.
What a great opportunity for them, like to come to the Pacific Northwest from Texas,
yes.
Just so completely different.
Well, the funny thing is the big differences were not the weather. It was, I hate to say this because, I love Seattle for many, many reasons, but that whole idea of the Southern hospitality and, the Seattle freeze, it was something from a personality perspective and a culture.
I thought you were going to say how nice Seattleites
are. Oh, no,
not.
Seattleites are nice. It's just different in the sense that things like, when people move in Texas, you get a knock on the door and you get cookies, or, hey, how can I help? And here people wave at you and they're very nice, but it's just a different atmosphere.
For the record, we do that in our neighborhood. So anybody who moves in or just has a baby, there's people coming and going and bringing wine and cookies and introducing themselves and stuff.
And I do think it happens. And we loved the street we moved on. Part of it was we moved into a house that was almost at the very top of a hill, and nobody wanted to walk up the cul-de-sac because it was like a hike. It was a great cardio workout. And the difference is when it was snowing and all the neighborhoods were shut down, our street was Sledville City. Like everybody would tranche up because you could have a nice long run down the street in the sleds and the discs. So, it's a trade-off. But completely different perspective on the world and culture and what life is like. And it was an exciting time, and I wanted to get into tech. I'd wanted to do that for a while. Got here at the time Microsoft was going through a lot of change. And the way I put it is it wasn't a great fit for me, and I wasn't a great fit for Microsoft. So we decided that a couple companies had been pursuing me. And so just said, you know what? We tried it. I'm going to take a look at, there's this other opportunity that I have. And so I'm going to pursue that opportunity. And I had some other things going on with my family, and it just made a lot of sense that I might pursue this other opportunity. Long story short.
Also in Seattle?
Nope. Back in Texas, strangely enough. Long story short, got to the company. That day, the board of directors determined that...
Did you pick up and move your family?
No, they hadn't moved yet. We were going to move. But the day I started, the board of directors put the company up for sale. And so I walked in thinking I was going to go do something different, and turns out, nope, they were going to sell the business. And basically, I was asked to help them retain the customer base and then eventually they were going to sell the company, and I could decide what I was going to do next. So I'm in this middle ground phase and trying to figure out what am I going to do, but I've already made this change and didn't want any more upheaval. So I did it for essentially about a year to 18 months. And then I was lucky enough that I got a layoff package, and I called my husband and I said, yep, I volunteered. I held my hand up and said, yes, please.
Was he still in the Seattle area?
They were still here. They hadn't moved. I was traveling back and forth, but told him, hey, you know what? The opportunity came up. They said, hey, you haven't moved. What do you want to do? And I'm like, great, package me out. I'm kind of done with all of this. This is crazy. Worst case, I'll find another job. I can always find another job. Got home, got on a plane, came back home first week, and just, hanging out, and told my husband, I said, I don't think I want to go back to corporate world. And my husband, we were very fortunate. He was a stay-at-home dad at the time. And he basically looked at me and said, okay, so what are you going to do? And I said, I don't know. I think I'm going to figure this out. I think I'm just going to pick up some contracting work or do something. And long story short, along my career, I had been helping peers of mine help them tell their stories and refine their messaging and their narratives, because it often impacted the marketing work I was doing. And so I thought, there's something with this that I can figure out what I'm going to do. But in the meantime, I'm just going to pick up some projects and I'll figure it out along the way. I wasn't worried, but sort of. Got a phone call from a friend of mine, and he said, hey, I hear you're, back in town. I have this project and it's all about storytelling, and would you be interested or willing to come work on it? I said, sure. Why not? I'm free. I'm available to give me something to do. It's like a 3-month project at the time. And I said, yeah, I'll come in and do it. A year and a half later, I was still working on this particular project or set of projects and working with a group of executives and helping them on their executive communications. And I was interested in it because it was challenging me in a different way that I hadn't been challenged before. I was helping build a communication platform. There was just a lot of aspects to it that I really enjoyed. And 18 months went by, and then someone who was involved in the work that I had been doing on that project said, hey, could you come work on this project? Sure, why not? I'll come pick this project. Anyway, needless to say, over the course of about 2 years, I had been doing all of these various projects.
And it was all just word of mouth.
And then I realized, you know what? Either I'm going to turn this into a business and really get serious and quit doing it as just general contract and do something with it, or I need to go get a real job. Mm-hmm. Like, I need to do something. Decided that, you know what? I'm going to ride this wave. I'm doing well at it.
You didn't want to go back to a job anyway.
I didn't really want to go back. I would do it, but I did not want to have to do it. And I was actually being fulfilled in a way that I hadn't been in a really long time. Because one of the things I recognized about myself is I enjoyed watching others get on stage and others really succeed. And it wasn't that I was afraid of being on stage myself, because I had done panels and presentations. It was more about watching other individuals really come out and show themselves, be vulnerable in a way that they never thought they would be, tell some of their stories, share some of their messages, create a connection with the audiences that they hadn't ever thought about before in ways that were very different, kind of broke the mold in how they thought things were supposed to be done. I have an expression that I've used in essentially the last 5 years. You got to be willing to run with scissors. And part of that isn't the danger of really truly running with scissors per se, but it's actually just changing how you think about things. Mm-hmm. Like,
it's taking a risk.
It's taking a risk. It's actually stepping out of your comfort zone, but not like just, jumping off a cliff. It's like, okay, you can run with scissors, you can go a certain distance, and what's the worst going to happen? Okay, you drop the scissors. in the grand scheme of things.
Well, you hope you don't trip on the way.
You don't. I prefer to think if you're going to trip on the way, the scissors are going to go sliding out.
Okay,
but,
perfect. That's a good scenario.
It's a good scenario. But, it's just being willing to take the risk and say, okay, what is not the worst thing that's going to happen, but it's what is the best thing that's going to happen? And so I realized that in doing this for that period of time, I really needed to be willing to say, okay, I'm going to put this stake in the ground and I'm going to go do this as a business. I'm going to become a professional coach. And it wasn't about being called a coach. It was more, I have an opportunity to work on projects that I never envisioned myself doing. I never dreamed I would be doing certain types of work or certain types of projects or helping certain types of individuals go and be the best version or tell the best story of themselves or about what they were passionate about. And I had this opportunity, and it's like, I can go back to a corporate job, safety net, great insurance, all those things. But this is my opportunity to run with scissors and take a chance. And I did.
So are the clients that you work with, is it still word of mouth or it is? That's a nice way to run a business.
It has its risks. It has its risks. I was actually...
But you've been in business long enough to know how the flow goes. Like, as an example, this is probably a slower time of month or a slower time of year for you. We're in December. And then after the holidays, everybody panics and they go, oh my God, we need somebody in here to help, right? And then they start calling you.
No, actually, it's the reverse. What happens? Yes, it's the reverse. People look at, they get September, October, early November, they're like charging along, they're getting to the end of the year, and then they realize, we have to start planning for next year.
Oh, okay. So it's a planning process.
It's part of its planning. What are we going to go do? And then all of a sudden it's hey, we have these things. We need to go get these things done. We talked about that like 6 months ago.
Yeah. Hence you've got back-to-back meetings while you're here in Seattle.
It's literally back to back to back to back to back. So it's one of those things that, yes, there's ebb and flow like every business. It's just not necessarily the same. I was telling someone who asked me, how do you deal with the risk or the uncertainty? Because it's not like I have a book of business that I don't have products on the shelves to go sell. It's me. It's my team. I have a small group of people, which is part of the idea of the collective, which is I have been blessed enough to meet a wealth of great individuals that I can connect with to say, hey, I've got this project. Can you come help me? Whether it's for video development or it's storytelling and writing or it's helping presentation coaching. I've got 6 people that are going to be doing various presentations and I need help getting them ready to go. Whatever the thing is, I've been very blessed. But it's not like I have product on the shelf that I can go and just suddenly raise money for. So there is that element even still today of this risk. But at the same time, I also know that I know what I'm capable of. I know what I've done. I know what I can accomplish. And I just believe in myself enough that if I don't have something today, it's about, am I doing the things I need to do to make sure that people know, A, I'm available, or I want to get into this type of work, or I'm interested in helping people do whatever it is that they're working on. But the person that I was talking to, they said, well, how do you deal with it? And I said, well, here's the funny thing. Many, many years ago when our kids were little, we were into camping when we had time before they got into sports and their various aspects of their lives. We would go camping, but I am not a camp tent person.
Are you a glamper?
I am not even a glamper. I'm a portable condo camper.
Oh God, portable condo.
Portable condo. Yes, we had a 5th wheel. And at the time we weren't doing camping, and I never really said it out loud, but I always had this philosophy in the back of my head, like, worst case scenario, if we had to, we could go rent a campsite and we could live in the travel trailer. If we lost the house, if I couldn't build business, if something terrible happened, but the possibility of what I could be doing was so much bigger and better. But I was like, okay, so that's like a crazy safety net, but worst case scenario. So it wasn't literally until the last couple of years that I was like, you know what? I think we can get rid of the travel trailer. I think we're okay. We've got one kid through college.
You don't need it to fall back on
I
now.
don't think I'm going to have this to fall back on, that we'd have to move ourselves into the fifth wheel worst case scenario. But, it's that there's always that element of, okay, what are you going to do? Everybody thinks through what is like the worst thing that could happen. But at the same time, it's like, okay, if you focus on the worst thing, then you won't actually go take the adventure or be willing to go on a journey where you're doing something that you're passionate about, or you're stretching your limits.
So you had mentioned that your husband is a stay-at-home dad, or was, because your kids are older now. What was that like for you and for your relationship, and then also for explaining that to other people? Because it's still somewhat unusual. Like, I don't think it's the common thing. So there has to, and I'm totally projecting here, but is there some sort of explanation that has to come with that when you tell people what you do or what your husband does?
Well, now we just say he's semi-retired, because the reality is, even though our son is graduated now and gainfully employed, which is wonderful and amazing, we're very proud of him, and my daughter is in college and she's almost graduated and they're really doing amazingly well, there's still things that come up that him having the flexibility. Really what it came down to is we were two ships passing in the night, and he's worked part-time along the way, but we were two ships passing in the night. I was working and he was working at night, and we just didn't really have a relationship. And part of it was he really wanted to be involved in his children's lives. It was important to him. And I wanted to be involved, but I also knew I was very passionate about career and making an impact and being in the workplace. It was just, part of it was I owe to my dad, because it was never, there were no gender roles in growing up in my family. It was, we all had to mow the lawn, take out the garbage, do all those things. And, I had to learn how to change a tire. And my dad just basically expected me to grow up as a self-sufficient adult. And so I had that passion or that desire. And so he was very willing, because we wanted someone to be home. He was very willing to step back from what he was doing and step into the role of being a full-time parent. You ask, what was the explanation? There was a number of years where I would show up to the holiday pageant or, some school event, and people would literally look at me and say, "Oh, you really do exist." Like, yeah, no one asks that about the dads when the dads show up. But all of a sudden, because I'm the mom and showing up, like, "Oh, you really exist." Like, yeah, no, I'm not a figment of, their imagination. I really do exist. But it was this odd, it was odder for me in some ways than him. But at the same time, like, he could go and have a conversation about sports as long as the other dads weren't, well, what career are you in? What do you do? Like, oftentimes he could have conversations about sports. The hardest thing for him was the after school and, the play dates. And it took a while for people to be comfortable with, okay, he's the dad and the dad is the one doing those things. But at the same time, I have to give a lot of credit to the moms, because they also were very open and welcoming. It wasn't like, oh, there's something wrong with him. It was just, wow, look at how he is with the kids. And
was this on the east side?
No, well, it was on the east side, and it really started when we were living in Texas originally.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yes, it started then.
Because those are two places a little bit less liberal than Seattle.
Traditional family styles were very common, and wherever we were. And it was very odd. Even with the females that I was working with, typically they had partners who were working. And so either they had a nanny or they had daycare or whatever it was. There wasn't my husband is the stay-at-home, my spouse is the stay-at-home parent. So that was an odd dynamic. But, I look at my kids' relationship with him, like they call him, they text him, they probably talk at least once or twice a day. I have a good relationship with them, but it's definitely different. But I am so thankful that
does
they
it make
have
you
that
sad,
relationship.
or
No.
is it? And again, I'm totally projecting it, and not that you should feel sad or feel anything other than you do, but I'm just curious if that and you answered it already that you said no, but that I just want to give the background of why I asked that, because I'm just curious whether that would be like, or if there was any jealousy or sadness with that.
Sadness is, to me, and it was sad. It's sadness not has anything to do with my husband. I was never jealous. I was always thankful because I was enabled to go and do the things that I wanted to go pursue. And not too many people can say they walked home and said, oh, by the way, I took a layoff package. Yeah, we didn't talk about it, but the opportunity came up, so I took it. That might make someone crazy or scared.
And it not for your husband, though.
He was worried, but he was like, okay, fine, we'll figure it out. And you're the type of person, you'll go figure it out. The whole running with scissors things. He's been dealing with that for a really long time. And then the second time is, yeah, I've been doing this project stuff for a while now. I think I'm going to just do this as a business. And he was like, okay, all right. Well, we haven't starved yet and we've been able to pay the bills. So we'll, figure it out kind of thing. I feel very thankful that I have that. I've never felt jealous at all. I do feel sad sometimes when I think about the times where I had to work and I missed something important, or he got to go and do and see things that I didn't, although he got very good at, we call it nicely lying white lies to me. So for example, like things like I didn't see many of my children's firsts, whatever those things were. Yeah. And so I would come home in the evening or on a weekend and I would see something, whatever the thing was, and I would be so excited. And he was just like, oh yeah, that's amazing. And then like a month later, he'd be talking about something and I'm like, they did that before, right? He's like, yeah, but it was the first for you, Tara. It was the first for you. Like that was his thing. It was like, but it was the first for you. So it's still important. So some days I'm sad about that. Other days I'm sad that I didn't have that kind of relationship with them, that day in and day out. They don't necessarily text me the same way they text him and have the conversations, but I'm never jealous. That's a choice I made and I'm okay with the choice. As a matter of fact, my daughter, she's home from college for Christmas break and she made the comment to me. She's like, Mom, I look at some of my friends and some of the things that, they talk about with their parents. And I think, I'm kind of lucky. I'm kind of special that you went and, you were working. You kind of set a precedence. You gave me someone that I could envision how my life could be, how I could work, how I could do those things.
How old is she?
She's 21, almost 22.
Oh, gosh.
Yes.
What an amazing compliment to you.
Yeah.
And the whole family. I mean, it's the whole support system.
Yeah, it is. It's a support system. So whether or not the gender roles were reversed, the spousal roles were reversed, it's a support system. And so from that perspective, I think anybody who is jealous of a relationship is discrediting themselves and not giving enough credit to the fact that it takes a support system. I always have this, in addition to running with scissors, say, it takes a village. It takes a tribe to make certain things happen. Nobody does something big on their own. And I think people forget that sometimes. It's like, it's all right to go and ask for help or look to the people around you and figure out, okay, how do we go accomplish this together? No one has to be one single superstar, because at the end of the day, if you have one single superstar, then you've left behind a whole group of talented people that could have made it something bigger than just one person. And so my career, what I've done is about the four of us and about many other people along the way that have been supportive.
So you described growing up that you were taught to be very self-sufficient. What else? There has to be something else in there in your upbringing that made you so bold, that made you so confident to step out on your own and make life choices and family choices that do go against the norm. What do you have siblings?
I do. I have an older sister, And then I have
how much older is
siblings.
Oh, and you have younger ones too.
Yes.
So how many siblings?
There's 3.
Okay, so 3, one older, two younger.
Yes. And so, I mean, I have siblings. We were all treated like these were expectations. I don't know that there was something in my upbringing per se that was a touchstone. I think part of it is my personality, in the sense of I can't see myself not trying something. Like it's not that I get bored easily. It's more if I don't try something, then I'm going to think about that thing, and I'm going to think about it and obsess about it and think about it and think what would have happened?
But most people aren't like that. Most people are, and maybe not in your world, because you're working with Fortune 10, women, mostly women, right? Or all women?
No, it's not all women. I have had and have very wonderful male clients as well. Really, for me, it's about the person. And sometimes, yes, they're risk adverse. They're not willing, what would happen. I do find myself being drawn to people who are similar to me, who are willing to step out of that box of comfort. But I can't say there was this one thing. I mean, I was in drama, and, we were always forced to, push ourselves and, take on characters and be willing to put ourselves out there. And so maybe that was a part of it. And that got started when I was in junior high. And
did you grow up in Syracuse? So
I was born in Syracuse, and then we moved to Texas after a period of time.
I'm just wondering, the reason I ask, I'm wondering if there is something, like I grew up in New Jersey, and I have to believe that the Jersey attitude and going into New York City, that informed who I am now.
Oh, 100% formed. That there many people, when I explained to them my family grew up in Syracuse, and they are like, okay, I see it. People look at me and they're like, you don't have an accent. You come off like, hey, we're going to go do this, and I believe we can go make this happen. And, sometimes my weakest link is I have been known to have very little patience for things that I find are ridiculous, or, people who are stalling on something, or, they're putting up roadblocks for the sake of roadblocks. Like I, definitely like walking down Manhattan, like, okay, the light's yellow. Well, I can sit here and wait, or I can just cross the street. Like, let's just cross the street. Let's call it good and like keep on moving. I'm very much and I try and not leave people on the side, like knock people over. But at the same time, my attitude is, come on, let's keep moving forward. We can figure this out. Let's keep moving forward.
Now I know why Debbie connected us.
Yeah. And
our mutual friend, Debbie.
Yes.
And because I'm the same way with that. It's like, I make a decision and then boom, I go.
Right. Right. I think about decisions, but it's not like like, all right, I could do this. I could do this. I could do this. I could do this. Like, the light's yellow. Let's go. Come on. We generally know we have to go in a direction, so let's go. So there is that northeastern piece of me. I think at the same time, that southern hospitality, that sense of being open and welcoming, and has also had an influence on me. There isn't anything that I would say I had this pivotal moment in my life that said, be bold or take a risk. Part of it is I looked at the people around me and thought, do I want to be like that person? What can I learn from that person? Or what do I think of that? And you were doing that when you were growing up? Oh, all the time as a kid.
That's really insightful.
I was very observant about people and their behaviors. At a certain time growing up, I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. That's much more all right, let's make a decision, move on it. You're guilty, you're not guilty. I can defend you. I can win this thing. And I do have a little bit of a competitive streak. But most of it, my whole thing was, well, there's something behind this. Something happened. Like, what can I observe? What's going on? What's happening? Like, I love sitting in a mall watching people. I have always been fascinated by what people are doing and why they're doing it, and even creating stories in my head. Well, why did they do this, or what's happening with them, and those kinds of things. And so observing and watching people, I just started thinking about, well, would I want to do that? Would I want to be that way? I saw this thing.
So this is like you have created the perfect job for yourself because you're observing people and then in your words, you're helping shape their story, helping draw them out. So you're curious about them and then you're asking enough questions to draw them out and help them kind of regurgitate it or, just be able to speak it for themselves.
I look at it as I'm observing, I ask questions, I talk to them so I can understand what are the puzzle pieces that make a person up. What does that look like? How do I think about the different puzzle pieces? And could they be formed in a different way that this person could be vulnerable or willing to take a chance about putting out a story? Recently, one of my clients released a product and she was very excited about it for a deeply personal reason. And in the past, she wouldn't have necessarily shared that story or that aspect of herself. But in talking with her about the potential impact of what this particular product could do for billions of people, she and I came to this place where she was willing to put herself out there and say, here's why this is important to me. She grew up in a country where the first language is Spanish, and her family moved to North America when she was young, and she had to learn English. She didn't speak the language. She came into a country. She was very lonely in the sense of she didn't feel like she could connect with people. And that was very hard for her at a very young age. And so that stuck with her along the way. And so she had the opportunity to create something that would help people who, wherever they were in the world, they could use this and be able to translate from their language into the language of where they were at. And suddenly it opened up doors for many people who are traveling. Or if they're in a country and they suddenly get sick and they need to be able to communicate to a doctor or a medical person, or they're completely lost, or they are doing business or whatever it might be. And for her, it really was rooted in the fact that if she had had something like this to help her learn English along the way, how much different her life would have been. And so part of it is really being able to share those kinds of stories and how impactful things are that you might think are small are really big. And it's her boldness. You're being bold. To me, it's all about how can I help people be comfortable being bold in whatever story, whatever message, whatever it is that they want to communicate. For me, that's being bold. Like I get very excited and I celebrate the fact that this individual is willing to be bold and put themselves out there in a way that they might not have ever considered before.
Do you think that everyone could do this for themselves? Like, do you think it's important for everyone to kind of go through this process and have a story?
Absolutely. I think people think it's all about spokespeople. And one of the things that I really focus on is it doesn't matter if you're an individual working in a company. I tell this to my own son. He's in his first job. It's important for people to know who you are and to be comfortable in speaking about what do you believe in relative to work. We have lots of conversations about, what's workplace appropriate and, political passions and social passions, social issue passions and all those things. But, that balance of how do you show up and be able to communicate who you are and what your strengths are and what your superpower is. It doesn't matter what level you are because you are a contributor. And so, for example, for individuals who are either individual contributors or early in their career, their leaders are looking to understand how can this team or this group of people help me accomplish what our vision is for the company. So, founders who are building small teams into big teams, how can they understand what each person's strengths are, and how can they understand how this person, beyond just a list of skills, can really have impact in the company? You as an individual, and whether or not you're working or not, how can you think about what you can go and do and accomplish for yourself? And what does that look like? And be able to communicate, I have this goal, or I want to go do this thing, or I want to step out of my comfort zone and be bold in doing something. Being able to communicate that and share that. I think everybody, it's something that we all need to do a much better job.
That's actually, you use the dirty word these days, politics. And so how do you navigate like telling a story? And I'm going to use an example where let's say a company is advocating for women. Maybe it's Oiselle, and they have women's running clothes. That's what they specialize in. Or Title IX, the women's clothing company. So you're a company that has a women's base, focused on women, and maybe as the CEO or the owner, you have a very strong opinion about it. Do you suggest that people talk about that, or that stuff should just remain private?
It depends on what it is. So for me personally, I have been asked on a number of occasions to go work for political representatives at all levels. And I've always shied away from that because to me, it's not about an individual political platform. I have my own personal passions and things that I'm very committed to: diversity, inclusivity. What does that look like? How do you think about it? How do women as leaders show up in a way that they are seen as bosses or leaders first, and it's not an attribute that's attached? Like, you don't have to have a gender attribute. So it really depends. So in the examples you gave me, if someone, and I have actually helped founders who are starting companies that, whether it's women's health issues, it's, women's products, whatever they might be. I think it is important, if that's the foundation of your purpose and of your company's purpose, you should absolutely talk about it. It's your personal passion, and it's the foundation of your target market and who you want to be for your target market. It's important.
I guess part of it is how it comes out. And I'll make it personal now. I'm using these other examples, but I'm thinking, well, this could just very well be about me. So I've got a large following, right? So I've got a big newsletter, and I've got Wanderlust and Lipstick and Wander Tours. It's all women focused. And people come to me, basically, they'll look at my Facebook feed to feel good, right? Because there's pretty photos on there. They don't want to hear my thoughts on politics. And I also have, I definitely have more liberal Democrats in my community than I do conservative Republicans. But those conservative Republicans are still there, and they are lovely people, fantastic people. So I also don't want to alienate people. So I just hold back because I want people to feel good, and I want them to come to my Facebook page or my Instagram and know that it's a place where they can see pretty pictures and see kind of fun things going on, and not see me mired in being pissed off about the latest politics.
So there's a couple things there that I would unpack. The first is my Facebook page, and I have all these companies. That's different than Beth's activism and Beth's passions and Beth as a human being separate from the business. There's nothing to be said that you can't have your own Facebook page or Instagram or communications where you are using those as a platform for communicating what you're passionate or you're politically active on. I think that's an important piece of us as human beings, that we feel, particularly in the United States, we have a voice and we should be using it. That to me is very distinct in and of itself. You as a person, you as a CEO and executive of very successful companies, this isn't about communicating unless you are basically saying, I'm using my role as an executive to push an agenda forward.
I see.
Then if that's the case, then that's a whole nother conversation about what does that look like. That's something I have dealt with individuals.
That's a good distinction.
But it's really about who's showing up, because the reality is, when I say who, we have multiple who's in us. I have myself as a founder. That's a who. I have myself as a coach. And I have myself as a mom, and I have my who as, a person who is socially active. those are all different who elements. And I think that becomes what is the right media or what is the right communication vehicle for how you want to communicate those things. So if it's really about not just pretty pictures, but engaging people in envisioning what's possible, like where they could go, what journey they could take, what adventure they could have, then that is the place for all of that. If it's about going to a country to go and fight, for example, women's rights.
In Saudi Arabia.
If it's about going to a place or going and arguing for something to do with, government choices and really driving awareness of, the suffering in Syria or whatever it might be, and part of it is an element of what you're communicating is not just the adventures, but mission-driven work or mission-driven tourism, then that is the appropriate place in your business to communicate those things, because what you want people to understand is if they have those same or similar passions or you want to create awareness about these issues, then that is something that should be a part. But if it is much more about I'm currently raising my voice against or driving awareness of some social or political issue as a person who happens to be named Beth, then that belongs on a personal channel.
My problem is that everything's all mushed together.
Yes. and part of what I do talk about is there are places where they were mushed, but you should separate them. So oftentimes what I find is I have executives who I tell them, make your Facebook, make your Instagram your personal place and your zone of friendship and your zone of communication, whatever your philosophical ideas are, whatever it is, if you want to retain a piece of that self. Mm-hmm. And then open up your LinkedIn, your Twitter, whatever it might be, that becomes the place where you're communicating your business values or whatever it is.
That makes sense.
And so you can have different channels for different purposes. For an individual who wants to be open and cover all things everywhere, then, they're making a choice, and we have conversations about, okay, you're choosing to do this, and here are the things you need to consider.
Or for me, it's I cover nothing. It's not that I cover everything. It's just that, and I think I'm happier for it, and I think other people are happier for it because I don't feel I'm at liberty to get on there and rant about something.
Well, and the interesting
sometimes
thing
I think we just need to keep our mouths shut.
But here's the funny thing about that is our liberty is to say something. That is our liberty. That is actually what is at risk right now in many ways, whether it's social media and the bullying or, the fraud that's happening, the fake news, all of those things, our liberty is at risk. And so you saying that about your liberty, it is actually your liberty. It's a choice to make, to say, what is the right communication vehicle that I should be espousing that is my liberty, that is my right. And that could literally be you setting up a blog post, blog page where you do your ranting. And that's actually something that you rant and, very few people have access to it. And you actually just get it on digital paper.
And those who want
to read it.
Right. Those who want to see it and read it.
You open it up, can. But it is this interesting thing in terms of that idea of liberty.
Right. Yeah. Do you have a book in you? Have you thought about a book, kind of like a how-to? Because this seems so ripe with, okay, leave me with the top 3 tips and, just explain how I too can bring this whole thing.
It's funny because there are days I think I have a set of blog posts that I write to myself, that I do. I don't call it journaling because it's not my thoughts. It's literally me, if I were going to write a book or if I were going to tell this story, I would, and I write those things. I said, this is the story I would tell and these things. I get asked to do a tell-all book. And, I'm like, oh, I'm under NDA and, I kind of like my business. And right now it, does pay for a mortgage and, my life and food on the table. So I'd be kind of getting myself in trouble. I do think about a total fictional story about people's attributes that I create into characters. And I, tell some crazy story of, an executive in their life and kind of an amalgamation of all the things I've seen. And then I think about, do I do a kind of, not a how-to, but, my perspective on how you show up. And the funny thing about it that has kept me back from doing that is oftentimes there's so many things out there. I recently read something about, Warren Buffett and, his 25-1, which is, write down the 20 things that are priorities for you. Go back to that list and circle the 5 that are the top 5 priorities, and then go and create what is the first thing you're going to go do against that priority. And then once that's done, write your next number 1 thing you're going to go do. There's the 50-30-5-5, which is 50% of it is all about, what do you know and what can you get done and who you are. And 30% is, okay, who do you need around you? And the 5 is, okay, what's going to require some luck. And the other 5% is, okay, what do you have to go gain, skill or earn or develop? And so there's all these how-to things out there. And I think part of what has made me successful, and I have been told by my clients, is the conversations that we have and the fact that I sit and listen. And it's not feeding back to them, but saying, you mentioned these 3 things that you said, and I found those things interesting. I think that's what your audience really wants to look for. Who are you talking to? This is who you're talking to. These are the things they care about. And so I probably could put something together, but I feel like there's just so much noise out there about how do you be your authentic self. And
I thought that myself about before I wrote my first book, Wanderlust and Lipstick, The Essential Guide for Women Traveling Solo. I thought, there's so many books out there for women travelers. And then I realized, I just have a different perspective. Like I can bring something different to this. So maybe you'll reach that point when you have some space and some time for it.
I would like to think I have that in there, in it. It's funny. The first thing I think about is I'd be more inclined to write, and I have had this noodling in my head for a long time, and is, what does it take to be a parent from the perspective of, you face all these interesting challenges that no one really explains. And now that I have children looking back on their lives and our life and my life as a parent and how, you go through these phases. And if somebody steals this, I'm going to say it was my idea first. Is, it's all about the binkies and the blankets. How do you keep them safe? And then it's all about, when do you put on your boxing gloves and you go to the mat for your kids? And, what does that look like? And what are those, my personal instances where I've had to, what I call, put on the boxing gloves to fight for my kids. And then there's the, that point in time where, you're kicking them out of the nest, you're kicking the birds out of the nest and you're letting them fly and, reach their own heights and, you go through this thing. And so I've often thought I think I could write a book more about that just from going through that. But
just
I don't know.
More natural.
Just more natural. But
yeah.
maybe, I do all these crazy musings. On my Facebook page, I have this thing that I call the Chronicles of an Empty Nester. And it really started more as a lark. I was noticing things when my daughter went off to school, things like, it's Sunday. I really need to do laundry. And then I would think, oh no, I can't do laundry because the kids got to do laundry. And then I would realize, no, wait, I have freedom to do laundry whenever I want. I can put clean towels in the bathroom that was formerly the kids' bathroom that is now everybody's guest bathroom, because I don't have to worry about those towels laying on the floor or getting stained because of whatever, soap, a hair product, or whatever it was they're doing, like these little tiny freedoms. So now, oftentimes people will tell me, I love reading your Chronicles of an Empty Nester. So maybe I'll put that together as a book.
Sounds like fun. I am cognizant of your time and your back to back meetings.
Yes.
I have one more question for you, which I ask all of my guests. What does it mean? And I know you did talk about this, but just encapsulate here at the end as we wrap up. What does it mean to you to be bold?
It means running with scissors. It means not thinking about all of the list of risks, all the horrible things that could happen, but it's what could happen in the sense of what happens if we run with scissors? What's possible? What can we cut through and accomplish something? So to me, it's all about that essence of boldness is what are the things I could do that would just be so different, that would push myself, that would make me look back and say, wow, I'm really glad I pushed myself to do that. Or I thought I was crazy, but I'm kind of glad I did it, kind of thing. That to me is being bold.
I'll never look at a pair of scissors the same way again. I'll want to go out running with them. Where can people find you? Websites, social media?
They can find, this is the funny thing, because so much of the work I do social media-wise is really for my clients. So elevatecommunication.com is where most people can find me. And LinkedIn. And yeah, my Facebook. Some of my Facebook is public. Most of it's private because that's where I choose to have those dialogues and my liberty of sharing the things that I'm thinking about, that I'm concerned about.
Right. Okay. Well, I'll link to those at least. elevatecommunication.com. Thanks so much for making the time today, and good luck getting back to Austin. Hopefully you don't have any
fingers.
Mechanical issues on the ride home. Thanks. I really like the idea of giving thought to those 3 questions that she talked about. What are you passionate about? What's your superpower? And how do I show up? I think that's something that we could all just sit and ponder for some time and really give some thought to. Whether you are representing a company or not, I think those are really good questions we could just all ask ourselves. If you enjoyed that conversation with Jennifer Cobb Moynihan, you might enjoy other episodes from business owners such as entrepreneur and author Mina Yu, who was just on episode 107. Kelly Phelan, and she's the founder of The Works Seattle. She was on episode 102. Or you might really enjoy hearing from the creator of the Cinnabon recipe, that recipe that we all know and love. That was Geraldine Brousseau, and she's on episode 77. Really, so many incredible women. You can find those and all of my other episodes at shesboldpodcast.com/episodes or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Next week, my conversation is with Sharon Wood. She was the first North American woman to climb Mount Everest. Now, she has a new book out, and we talk all about that and the quote-unquote aftermath, as she calls it, of having been the first North American woman to summit the world's highest peak. If you'd like to support the show and let me know how much you are inspired by these conversations and how much you look forward to hearing the uplifting stories from my guests, go to patreon.com/bebold. Patreon supporters get access to bonus content. They get to submit questions for me to ask guests and become part of our private Facebook group. That is for ladies only. Don't forget to check out my tours at wandertours.com. It's WANDER, wandertours.com. Now, just last week, I posted our Gujarat, India tour that focuses on textiles and tribes, and that's already half full. So if you want to go to India, if you like textiles, if you are interested in tribes, if you just are interested in India in general, this is an amazing tour. It's a women-only tour, and it's in March of 2021. We also have space on the co-ed Papua New Guinea trips in August. And if you're interested in Ireland, Bhutan, Southeast Asia, or any other destination, just let me know at beth@shesboldpodcast.com, and I'll get you on the list to be alerted when other destinations are available. I'm also working on a Morocco trip for the fall of 2021, working on those dates. To keep up with me and all of my travels, including Morocco, I'm going to be there next week. I'm leaving. You can connect with me by friending me on Facebook, and I'm on Instagram at both Beth Witwa and also Wandergal. So BETHWHITWA and also Wandergal. Feel free to leave a message or question at 877-280-5170. I love to hear your feedback, and I really appreciate it. Ladies, you can join the Be Bold Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/BeBoldGroup for support and encouragement for whatever ways you're trying to be bold. Thanks for joining me for another episode of the She's Bold podcast. Until next time, be bold.